Thanks everybody for attending the sessions today and for sticking with us here. Thank you to Brand Innovators for putting this on and inviting me to moderate. As he said, my name is Mike Sadicario. I'm the VP of Demand at Smart, one of the largest global full stack programmatic ad tech players. And we work across various industries, including challenging regulatory environments, including cannabis. So perhaps that's why I'm here today and excited about this panel. The future of cannabis marketing is our topic. And I think it's an important one for every brand marketer in the US and globally. The growth of cannabis and related businesses has consequences across every industry, whether it's e-commerce, healthcare, beauty, entertainment, food, logistics, I mean, so much more. If you haven't had any exposure to cannabis or CBD yet, this might be a good first step in education. Though we're going to talk more about the future than the past. That's the promise here. But if this is your everyday work, hopefully this just adds to a fun sort of debate within your organization. That said, and without any further ado from me, let me get to introducing the virtual dais. I know they get names and titles and everything, so let's skip that. Skip names and titles. What I want to know, we're going to go into a really quick, rapid round of fire questions about the future. So the first one is really kind of what's most at top of mind for most folks in the cannabis space, which is, what is your prediction on when you think cannabis will be federally legal in the United States? Maybe just say your name, title, and then say that answer if you don't mind. Joe, can I start with you?
Oh, you can start with me. All right. So I got to be ready for this. Let's go. Okay. So we talked about this a little bit the other day, and my feeling on this is that I think true federal legalization is still several years off. And what I hear, and I'm not an expert, I'm not on Capitol Hill regularly, but what I am hearing is that we probably will have some movement on banking, which in my opinion is 75% of the battle in terms of moving towards legalization, because it gives this industry access to funding, access to public markets, changes things like 280E tax regulations. So I think if that happens the next 6 months, that is a huge win for the industry. For the legal industry. And then I think in terms of full legalization, probably several years out, and even once it happens, we're still going to have state-by-state regulation. And I forgot to say, I'm Joe Hodas, Chief Marketing Officer for Wana Brands.
We jumped straight into it, but I like your answer. I was looking for a number, and you're like, so many. It depends, right? Always depends. Jessica, maybe you can give us a number. What do you think?
Number of years, you're saying?
Yeah, well, what year? What year do you think cannabis will be federally legal?
I'm going to use the power of manifestation and say 2021, just because I think that, we're close in some ways, but we're far in others. So I'm going to just put that out there because that's what I hope.
Okay, thank you. Cory, what about you?
Hey everybody, I'm Cory from Cresco Labs. I would have had an answer very similar to Joe. That would have been long and winded. But so for full legalization, I would put it at unfortunately probably several years out. So let's call it 5 years out at a minimum. Okay,
all right. Gabe, what about you? Optimist or not?
I'm gonna say 3, just because you're looking for a number. I'm cutting the middle. Yeah, I'd say 3 years. My name's Gabe Kennedy, co-founder of Plant People. Thank you for having Cory, Joe, nice to meet you. Michael, great to see you again. And Jessica, always a pleasure.
You too.
So yeah, looking forward to jumping into this with everyone.
I think this was overall optimistic. I feel good about this. Like everybody has a few years, so I think that's okay.
In our lifetime, we have to say that. It has to be in our lifetime.
Yeah, okay.
I'm the oldest one on the panel by far, but I'll still say in my lifetime.
Yes, that's the spirit.
All right, before we get truly going into this, again, there's a Q&A, there's a chat. Feel free to throw stuff in there as we go through. If there's something interesting, I'm opening them up right now for me. I will throw your question out immediately if it's relevant to the conversation right there, just not wait until the end. So feel free to put it in there, everyone watching. Okay, I'm going to continue with this like kind of rapid fire question and answer sort of here with some funny questions, hopefully. So first one, what major national Fortune 500 brand, a la Coca-Cola or someone like that, do you think will be the first one to own one of the top 5 grossing cannabis brands? So who will be first in the Fortune 500, let's just say, to own its top 5 grossing cannabis brand? Let's go reverse order. Gabe, let's start with you.
I will say Coca-Cola. Or I think there's probably a huge opportunity. I think beverage is obviously a huge opportunity. Tobacco companies like British American Tobacco, other large kind of conglomerates that feel threatened by said industry are we already know they're investing heavily in it, but I think there will be some acquisitions as soon as everything gets sorted out a bit more.
Okay, Cory.
Yeah, I think my answer would be someone who has existing infrastructure when it comes to distribution, like bottling and or distributor network. So my gut would be in the category of an Anheuser-Busch, or I should say AB InBev, Miller Coors, something like that can drive ubiquitous distribution with their current assets with the right brand. Hopefully my old employer PepsiCo will get into the ring, but I guess we'll have to see.
I said Coca-Cola just to see what you would say there. That was like,
I no longer work at PepsiCo. My wife's entire family worked only at Coca-Cola, so I have to just sort of play somewhere in the middle.
All right, Jessica.
I'm going to go candy, probably Mars, Wrigley, something in that direction, because so many cannabis brands have already copied a lot of their products, and I think they're excited. Not that we need more sugary cannabis treats, but I would say that or Johnson & Johnson.
By the way, if you're working at any of these companies and you're watching this, please write in. I want to see if we can debate this a little bit. Joe, over to you.
Well, unfortunately, everyone's kind of covered the major categories. I was going to say AB InBev as well, or Miller Coors, because I think the candy companies obviously have a lot of similarities in terms of the product types, I do think that they have a little bit more of an issue from a brand perspective in terms of being kid-oriented, wholesome family kind of stuff, and cannabis not being perceived that way. So alcohol has I think a greater affinity to the market from that standpoint. But I would also add that it depends upon how legalization rolls out and what that looks like, because manufacturing, distribution, and logistics is really going to be the name of the game, assuming that the companies that are already in the space understand cannabis and understand that consumer. The rest of it is, how do you scale, right? And so you could look at an Amazon, for example, and say, okay, well, maybe they get into the game because we're allowed interstate commerce and you can ship products, right? So they may be someone to consider as well in this discussion.
Joe, I think you're reading my notes, because my next question, literally my next question is, when do you think Amazon, because I thought someone might mention it, when do you think Amazon gets in the cannabis space? Is it the same answer as when it's all legal, a few years?
If you don't mind me jumping in, just because we were just talking about a second ago, is, Mike, we were talking about this a little bit the other day, and I think that one of the things that I was thinking about afterwards was they don't sell alcohol across, through Amazon, right? To my knowledge, at least, and they don't really sell pharmaceuticals. I mean, but I imagine that there's some back end overlap in terms of how CVS and some of these others are distributing pharmaceuticals. So as much as I just said, Amazon, I also wonder, is that really the model, or do they get into the game but via a completely separate vehicle versus the actual full Amazon platform?
Anybody want to add anything on that? I think we can move on to the next question, but if you want to add something about Amazon, you're welcome to. All right, I'm moving on. Kathleen, you have a great question in the Q&A. We're going to answer that in a little bit. I just want you to know that we're going to get to that very soon. My last rapid fire question for all of you, and this is ridiculous, but which celebrity cannabis brand is going to be the most popular by 2025? And I'll give you a couple just to set the stage. Actress Bella Thorne's CBD brand Forbidden Flowers, Mike Tyson's cannabis farm Tyson Ranch, Snoop Dogg's cannabis line Leafs, Rob Gronkowski's CBD Medic, Jay-Z's cannabis retailer Kaliva, Martha Stewart's CBD product land Martha Stewart CBD, Wiz Khalifa's Khalifa Kush, Seth Rogen's houseplant, or perhaps Willie Nelson, Jim Belushi, Tommy Chong, Bob Marley's Family, The Game, Jaleel White, Urkel. I didn't know Urkel had a brand, but he does. I'm voting for that one. Method Man, Lil Wayne, Carlos Santana, Kourtney Kardashian, Melissa Etheridge. I mean, any of those. Let's go, Cory. What do you think? Who do you think is going to have the biggest popular brand by 2025?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking 2025, as much as I respect the existing players in the space, I think it's much likely, more likely to be a mainstream celebrity like a Kourtney Kardashian or someone who has ubiquitous awareness, and an ability to influence and is comfortable by then playing in the space, and partnering the right infrastructure. So there's some really interesting work going on out there, but I think by then we will have everyday mainstream people speaking about this comfortably on Jimmy Kimmel late at night and all the other places, all the mainstream places that we would expect people to talk about the other brands that they play into, whether that's Instagram or something else. So
Jessica, Urkel? Were you thinking Urkel?
I do love Purple Urkel, but I'm going to say it really depends on how the audience shifts. If we're talking about more of a mainstream consumer that doesn't understand that many of these celebrities don't even probably use their products or use cannabis and it's just all a marketing scheme, then I would go with, Snoop Dogg or one of the OGs that truly believe in cannabis and use products regularly, because as a true authentic consumer, I don't trust any of the quality there. I think it's all just a face, stamped on a brand. Martha Stewart's brand. It's not, I think she partnered with a company. I don't think she's really developed the product. So I really it depends on how the audience shifts. But I'm going to take a stand for the authentic players that have been there since day one.
I like that. Joe, what do you think?
So the cynical side of me probably would agree with Cory. And I think that would be a sad state of affairs. The optimistic side of me says that I really like Seth Rogen's brand. I like what he's done with it. I mean, he's relatively new to the scene as it relates to having a brand and a product in the market, but I've seen this written, so I'm not the only person who said this, but his, I think, authentic understanding, to Jessica's point, of the product, his use of the product and how he uses it, I think is very relevant for the consumer. And I think he puts forth seemingly, I've not tried it, but it was seemingly a good product, well branded, all of those important elements. And I would much rather see that than 97% of the other brands you just mentioned.
Okay, thanks. Gabe, Martha Stewart CBD, you feel like you're a fan, right?
I haven't tried the product, but I would say I actually agree. I mean, I would love to see kind of the OG supporters and people who've been advocates and sort of leading the conversation be really successful. I do think that there will be a new wave, and by the way of like media and who's consuming media, how it can proliferate. I think that someone like, Selena Gomez could come out of nowhere and just like absolutely crush, right? Like mental health. We have like all these layers to it, representation, like I think that could be really powerful. I don't know. Maybe she has a company, maybe she doesn't. I'm not sure. But top of mind for me, that just kind of like popped in there. And yeah, that's my perspective. It would be great to see, some of the old guard, if you will, be really successful. But I also think that like I have a hope that, I hope that localized brands and agriculture and economies really thrive, because this is an opportunity to not just capture a whole bunch of wealth, but to really be able to look at how can we grow this industry with an inclusive mindset. And of course, there will be some big winners. It will continue to evolve like coffee or wine or any of these industries that are commodity and segmented, and have the market segmented. But I think a lot of the power comes from investing in and supporting more of the local economies and brands.
I think if Wiz Khalifa came around now versus like 10 years ago, I think that would have been the one for me by 2025. But I take all your points there. All right, I think that was really fun. Let's get into really serious conversation now, real questions. But with so many celebrities in the space and a lot of competition right now, right? It is not a space where there's only a few players. There's a lot of players and a lot of brands that are out there, and a lot of folks who are just new to the space and entering every day. And national advertising being notoriously difficult. I'm just wondering how each of you sees your brands breaking through, as this is like the future of cannabis, right? How do you expect your brand to break through this clutter over the next, let's just say, short-term future, 6 to 12 months? Jessica, I'm going to throw it to you first. You're going to be the first in the fire here. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Michael. I would just have to say, I mean, though there's many forces at play, I think quality stands strong over all else in the end. I think that Prima is a brand that has prioritized quality since day one, and also education and consumer support. At the end of the day, all that matters is that our consumers are happy and educated and the products are working. So I think that at a time when we can't really use Facebook advertising and Instagram and any of these traditional marketing channels, we really have to create, a small group of super fans to advocate and carry our brand forward and build awareness. So it's multiple forces, but I do believe that our commitment to quality products and our commitment to education, the fact that we launched as just an education platform with over 100 pieces of content, helping people understand why they're feeling a certain way, or how CBD can help, or how other things could help. And that our first hire was our head of customer experience. We have 24-hour chat support and all of those things. I think that really matters in the end, because it's really easy to start a brand today. What used to be everyone could have a blog. Now it's really everyone could have a brand. You have an Instagram, you have a brand. But I think to really build a brand with a capital B, with legs, you need values, you need a philosophy, you need a point of view, and you just need to handhold that customer.
Gabe, what about you? I see you nodding your head, so you're agreeing. The next 6 to 12 months, what are some of the things that you're going to be doing to sort of break through the clutter that is out there?
Yeah, so I was nodding because I agree. And Plant People is, I think it's important to say, like, we are not a cannabis, I would not consider us a cannabis company. We adjacently touch the plant because we have products with cannabinoids in them, but we have built and continue to build the brand with a celebration of all plants and mushrooms that can be supportive for solutions. And so I'm less focused on leading with ingredient, leading with compound, more focused on leading with solution and finding out the best ways that we can apply the research, the clinical trials, the anecdotal evidence, all of these things to best suit customer needs. And I think that that's where, my head and our heart is in terms of finding ways that we can be thoughtful, finding ways that we can lead with quality, lead with customer outcome, and really continue to grow with this mindset of regeneration. So can we continue to regenerate human well-being? Can we invest in regenerative organic practices from a sourcing perspective? Can we work to create products that are beneficial for people and planet, and start shifting the conversation of simply just acquiring customers for sake of profit, and really using brand, which hopefully has legs and values and mission and stories to really move a narrative forward. And for us, that is a time and place where cannabis applies. There's a time and place where cannabis does not apply. And to Jess's point, leading with quality, leading with integrity, with education, and being able to bring people into this world and meet them where they are at is very important. And I think that the biggest challenge has been, navigating this space is the barriers to entry are quite low. I think when you're talking about, recreational or adult use markets, it's significantly higher. But if we're talking about, hemp, CBD, cannabinoids in general, it's a low barrier space. And therefore you get a lot of misinformation, you get a lot of commoditization, and to sort of sift through that for a customer becomes really hard. And that's where I think brands like Plant People, like Prima, like Wana, I mean, everything that, you guys are doing. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen like Cresco Labs, like little bits and pieces of research referenced, it's really important. And I think it's important to kind of stick with core values.
So Joe, just to tag along on that, thank you, Gabe. If the barrier to entry is low, as Gabe was saying, Joe, how do you break through with your national brand that you're building with Wana? How do you make sure that the national brand, can get its day in front of the customer amongst all the other products that are out there competing in a very close race.
Yeah, when we talk about the regulated space, it's obviously a much higher bar, but you also have markets like Oklahoma, right, where there's thousands of licenses and brands and products that are getting into that market pretty easily, and it creates a crowded marketplace. So we have both ends of the spectrum there. But before I dive into how, I want to point out something that's interesting, and it is actually part of the how, which is both Jessica and Gabe. I think if you'd asked that question, Mike, 10 years ago, you would have gotten answers about scalability of digital platforms and where can we advertise and all the external brand touch points that people traditionally think when they think about communicating your brand. Neither of them mentioned anything about that, right? What they talked about was the less tangibles, the things that are about the brand that aren't an ad, right? They're more intrinsic to who we are, the product development, the research, how we treat our customers. And so where that dovetails to my answer is that as a national brand, so we're in 11, I'm saying national, we're in 11 states, we're in 9 provinces in Canada. We are a pretty large footprint company for the cannabis space. We have to figure out ways to super dive, hyper local, and be in that market, and to really maintain that brand integrity in the ways that Gabe and Jessica are referring to. So that's our customer interactions, our customers, meaning our B2B customers, as well as our consumers, ensuring that the product quality and the consistency and the safety are all there. Every single market we're in, that is the challenging part of scaling for a brand that is in as many markets as we are. And yeah, of course, we have issues with packaging looks different in one market than another, and how do we create that brand consistency? But really, the things that keep me up at night are all about how do we make sure that the Wana that we all know and love at my office in Boulder, Colorado, is the same Wana that we have in Ohio, that we have in Florida and elsewhere, especially when we're working with partners. So I don't really have a great answer other than to say it's a grind, man. And we every market we go into, we focus on it. We find good partners that can help support that mission, and we do our best.
That's my favorite answer. It's a grind. It's like, that's the truth.
Yeah.
Totally.
In a good way. We're serving people, and I love that. So
yeah.
It's a good grind, but it's a grind.
All right. So building on that, then, Cory, just tweaking the question a little bit for you specifically, with so many brands underneath the Cresco Labs umbrella, how do you both break through for Cresco, and how do you break through for individual brands within it at the same time? How are you working on that over the next, say, 12 months?
Yeah, it's a grind. I would say, reflecting on what everyone else has said, I think what's so interesting is, regardless of the size of your company or brands or the part of the industry we're playing in, we all have relatively similar priorities. As we think about making sure we first and foremost are quality and consistent, as Joe was indicating, being in 10 states, but really it's fundamentally the same thing we would expect if we worked at any company and we're doing marketing, which is, if I had a beer one day that was great and the next year was terrible, I would never try that beer again. Or if I went to a hotel in one state and I loved it, and I went to the hotel in the other state and it was really dirty, I probably wouldn't go to that hotel chain again. That's common sense in so many places where we all have worked, or so many people work. And yet we actually have to reinforce or talk about that in cannabis, because it's not so easy to do that across so many states when you're growing in each of those states, producing in those states. But creating that consistent thing that creates trust, consistency, is so important. What Gabe talked about of standing for something, believing in and standing for something that meets people's needs, and always doing that in everything you do, is core to brands that we all admire everywhere, and it's really important in this space as well. And I'd say the last piece, which Joe somewhat touched on, is beyond just consistently in quality, showing up and looking a certain way to drive really those memory systems for people that we all know so well, for Gatorade or for Nike or for Starbucks or for something that's so ubiquitous. When you have brands that are as scaled as we do, we want to make sure that people know and see and trust those brands, and that they experience them in a way that is memorable and noteworthy, so that when they're in any state, they're able to be familiar with what they're going to get out of that experience. So all those things are really hard with so much, splintering of scale across all these states and regulations, but it's the same core things that I would have been focused on at Gatorade or other places that I've worked that I'm focused on here.
I want to weave our way sort of towards Kathleen's question. I think it's a really great one about data and privacy and marketing. To get there, let me ask this first, which is to just kind of touch on the regulatory challenges. It's like in every single cannabis panel that there possibly could be, except I don't want to focus on the past or even maybe necessarily the present as much. But maybe, Joe, I know I've heard, we've spoken about this before, and I've heard you talk about before really eloquently about 280E and some of the challenges that are impacting cannabis and CBD advertising right now, including Safe Banking Act and sort of clearing the way. Maybe give us a couple words on it. I know you mentioned at the top, but like, can you go a little bit deeper for us and what you think might happen over the next coming year or two that might free us up, hopefully, in the space?
I knew I was going to do that at least once. I'm happy to talk about that. So, 280E, just for anybody who's listening who's not aware, IRS tax code that requires cannabis companies to pay a disproportionate amount of tax to the federal government because we are operating as a federally illegal industry. One of my favorite ironies, because we pay taxes for on product that they don't want to recognize, and then it goes into the banks that we aren't allowed to use. So it's an unfortunate situation, and it affects different parts of the industry differently, cultivation from retail, from brands like Wana, but it is onerous and it is significant. And so dollars go into paying 280 taxes that would otherwise potentially go to marketing. And depending upon which area of the industry you're in, you may or may not be able to use those dollars as part of, let's say, cost of goods sold, which you are able to, as a manufacturer, count against your 280 taxes. So it's really challenging, and many companies, I think, are intimidated by the fact that there is this large tax burden. So marketing, of course, suffers as a result of that. Hopefully this move towards a Safe Banking Act or Safe Banking Bill will either eliminate and or certainly refine that current situation, because and if that does happen, I think that means a number of things. It means additional capital going towards things like marketing and towards bigger initiatives for companies. I think it also means that at some point you have institutional investment and other dollars can come in. You hopefully have access to traditional banking facilities that cannabis companies just don't currently have. So it changes the dynamics from a financial perspective. And I think as marketers, it gives us hopefully better budgets that we can do a better job of educating. And that's really where hopefully a lot of those dollars go, is towards educating the consumer.
Thanks for that. Jessica, I want to turn to you on this, because we had a little interesting conversation earlier about platforms making decisions based on potential federal issues or whatever they might perceive as issues, and maybe the sort of diversification of marketing that you have to go through to ensure success. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of the regulatory challenges that you're facing or that you have faced, or that issues that's brought up for your business? But then also maybe we can turn it to more of a positive, with what funding you've been able to raise. Congratulations on a lot of that. What do you expect to invest your marketing dollars in, or your money towards marketing in the next 12 to 24 months?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Michael. So I think generally the biggest issue is that there's the disconnect between the Farm Bill's classification of hemp as legal and the federal, just kind of gray area we're dealing with before the FDA releases guidelines on how CBD should be treated as a supplement and acknowledged as a dietary supplement. We're kind of in this weird, blurry legal gray area, which inhibits us from using platforms like Facebook and Instagram in the traditional marketing fashion as other brands in other categories are able to. So here we are, Prima is the brand, and like Plant People, we're sold in major retailers. We're in Sephora, we're going into Whole Foods, we're going into Vitamin Shop. So the retailers are almost acting as regulators in the time until the FDA takes action. So we're able to sell in retail, but we can't market our products in the same way other brands can using Facebook and Instagram because of, again, this legal gray area. We also recently got kicked off of our text platform because Twilio changed their policy. And so now CBD brands like Prima, Plant People, and others can't use SMS as a part of our marketing strategy. And that's a huge issue because, you know, SMS made up a lot of our monthly revenue and it drove a lot of sales and engagement, and back to putting the customer first. There's nothing better than one-to-one communication. It was really an important strategic tool for us. And now we and no other CBD brands can't use SMS. So Prima is actually starting an advocacy campaign. Would love any of you all to get involved to try, and we're going to start a petition. We're going to, you know, send it directly to Twilio and all the cellular brand companies and hopefully make a change there. But again, they're just, who's above the, you know, Verizons and AT&Ts of the world? It's the government. So we're waiting for the FDA to acknowledge CBD and release guidelines. But until then, it's really important to diversify your marketing channels and strategy, because you never know when your Facebook account will just get shut down. It happened to us, I think, over 3 times. And then you can't run ads, and then everything is impacted by that. And it's also, you know, these platforms are pretty inefficient for us from a customer acquisition perspective. Sometimes it could cost us upwards of $200 to acquire a customer, and that's just not a responsible use of funds, especially because we have fundraised and we have been able to get institutional investments from incredible investors and firms. But we don't want to overpay for a customer when we know that, you know, a reasonable customer acquisition cost is not a few $100s. So that creates a lot of challenges and definitely requires us to diversify our initiatives and make sure that we have our eggs in multiple baskets at the same time simultaneously, which is a lot. It's a lot for a small team. It's a lot for, you know, a marketer coming from probably another category. And it's just really important for us to do that, to ensure that, you know, we can reach customers. But what we're doing now is really using our retailers as marketing engines and investing dollars in sampling programs and gift with purchases and affiliate and ambassador programs through our retailers, because that's the most efficient way to really reach new customers and build brand awareness with an anchor in retail. So that's just one thing we have to do now. I don't think that it'll stay this way. Again, hopefully soon enough, we'll get some acknowledgement and recognition from the FDA. But it's also exciting because I think this industry built itself too quickly. I can't think of another industry where there is an FDA-approved pharmaceutical drug, Epidiolex, using effectively the same compounds, the same cannabinoids as we're putting in products and able to sell online. So I do feel like this is a really groundbreaking and revolutionary time for the wellness industry. The fact that we can actually get these products in the hands of people at a time when stress is an epidemic. So it's challenging, it keeps things interesting. And again, it's just about investing in multiple channels at once and really seeing the retailers as both the regulators and the marketing anchors.
Thank you for that. And Gabe, when we think about your business, and you mentioned earlier that you kind of straddle, right? You're straddling the line of like, okay, you may be considered a cannabis business to some, and you may be considered, you know, alternative medicine or something else that's not cannabis to another. Do you find yourself like able to jump to one side when it's convenient, or, you know, like, are you finding the same struggles that everyone else seems to be having? And then to turn it positive again, future cast, like what is the next sort of like 12 to 24 months look like for you, depending on that sort of regulatory challenge or lack thereof?
Sure. Yeah. Yes would be the answer. It's it's like we're not like enough of this thing, we're too much of the other thing, right? It's just the fact that we have products that have cannabinoids in them kind of puts us into this category. And, you know, one would think that, you know, you could advertise or market products that do not have those compounds in them and not be restricted in the same way, but ultimately you are, because it leads to a web page that has those products, you know, on it, or a website that has those products on it. So it's been challenging, and I certainly agree with everything that Jess said, because it is extraordinarily inefficient and challenging to acquire customers or grow the business in the channels that one would traditionally use. And I think kind of gone be the days of growing your business through Facebook advertising or Instagram advertising. I think it's really important to think of different ways to engage the customer. We were huge proponents, and still are, of in-person events, of building community, of amplification through partnerships that are kind of deep and narrow. But with the last, year and a half, it's been really hard to have in-person events. So, obviously there was this whole swing into creating more digital communities and, being able to work with, with retailers in a different way. We built a big footprint of independent retailers, people, mom and pop shops that were willing to take, on a hemp product and believed in that being an important tool to sort of compete against the Amazons of the world or these larger big box retailers that are not willing to take it. Unfortunately, New York and LA, two of our kind of strong communities, got hit really hard, and we, that those doors sort of closed. And so I would say that it's hard to imagine or predict what will happen in the next 12 to 24 months. I think if I've learned anything over the past 12 to 24 months, that trying to predict something is quite challenging. I do, however, think that, going back to fundamentals is important, right? I think that it is so often that businesses overraise, overspend, and you get into a pretty detrimental cycle. So we've, just continued to kind of focus on the one-to-one relationships with our customers. I just got off a call before this, by the way, with the SMS carriers. I'm like, oh yeah, like when is it going to stop? So anyways, I think it'll be interesting in the next 24 months, returning to these in-person events, these one-on-one relationships, investing back in sampling programs, being able to do these things that were really critical to growth, but got sort of capped through the last, year and a half with everything that we've all been dealing with, obviously.
I promised Kathleen I would ask this question and I would get there, and I am. So Cory, don't blame me. It's Kathleen's question. It's a hard one. How are you using data to influence your marketing? And given the mixed legality of cannabis, what data privacy/governance rules are you using to manage that marketing data? So I think that does dovetail nicely, from the regulatory challenges question. So please.
Yeah, I will try and give a quick answer there, since I know we're short on time. Two things on our side. I think one is like trying to manage a business, in our case that's publicly traded, that intends to like be compliant with all the ways that the US government thinks about things for all other industries. And so all the ways that you have to manage and concern data, especially data related to people's medical conditions and things like that, is a tremendous amount of energy to compliantly do that within our organization. And you can imagine both the hurdles and opportunities that come through actually marketing through that data. The other thing I would reference, which is a really special thing about this industry and something that we benefit from, is while we have the largest branded portfolio in the industry, we also have a significantly scaled retailer. And I can't tell you how exciting it is to both not only have these branded products, but to be managing a retailer that has a tremendous amount of data that is created through our own e-commerce business and through our own in-store experience. That helps us learn a lot more about what our customers and consumers want, and then certainly allows us opportunity to do much more person-to-person marketing on behalf of not only the retailer, but on behalf of our brands. And you can imagine, coming from an area of PepsiCo and Gatorade, where we wished we had that level of one-to-one direct understanding and relationship, it's a really special place. And from a retail standpoint, to not only sell our own products, but to sell competitive product, it creates an entirely special ecosystem on that side too. So there's just not a lot of companies in the world of marketing that cross both sides of that. And so there's a whole new realm of using data in both directions that's happening uniquely in the cannabis space.
I'm going to keep going until Ritesh shuts me up or closes my video screen. There you go. There's a great anonymous question right now that Joe, I'm going to put to you. It says, though Facebook is effective, are brands exploring compliant channels like programmatic marketing to build brand and reach new customers? I think I know the answer, having talked to you many times before. Joe, please, you can answer this one.
Sure. So yes, of course. And I think the real challenge with programmatic for us is I do think there's some great compliant platforms. They understand the compliance requirements in each market, and there's good softwares and companies that back that up to be able to, for me as the marketer, not have to worry about, is my ad compliant in any given market? I will know that it is. And more and more, they're giving us access to mainstream platforms where, for Wana at least, that's really where I want my message to live, because I can talk to the cannabis consumer through MG Magazine or High Times or any of these other cannabis platforms, but I also want to be able to reach the cannabis consumer who's either kind of curious or who doesn't even know about cannabis, and reach them with a message. I think the shortcomings, though, are as a brand, and this is less concerning on the retail side, but as a brand, it's really hard to connect that last mile. So I can do brand awareness and brand building, but I can't really get that last mile of like, okay, did they go into the store and purchase the product based on my efforts through this programmatic campaign? So there's that piece of things, a challenge. And the other one is a lot of the platforms are really, really sophisticated. And I think as marketing organizations, most cannabis companies aren't quite there yet. So a lot of the tools are really, I think, developed for large scale companies that have that kind of team or background to be able to manage, hundreds of thousands of dollars across, 20, 30 markets. And so there's a little bit of in some cases, a little bit of a mismatch between things like minimum spends or how you actually manage those campaigns. And I hope that we'll continue to grow and get sophisticated. And likewise, some of the platforms will begin to meet us a little bit more in the middle on that.
Thank you, Ritesh. How are we doing with time? What's the deal?
Yeah, I think we are at time actually. So we're good to wrap.
I had one last question that I'm gonna ask, but I'm not gonna have any answers because I want to come back and do the same panel because it's an important question. We didn't get a chance to talk about the social justice issues and sustainability issues that all of these companies are working to help solve or at least promote. And it's really impactful and important for this industry. And so have us back. We'll talk about that because it's my fault. I missed the opportunity to do that, but it's an important one.
No, hey, we will absolutely do that. Thanks so much, Michael, for a great job in moderating. And thank you to all the panelists. I just want to say, it's when we have these conversations, you see sort of either one brand or one kind of an area collaborating. But I think in your case, it's like this industry is so nascent. There's so many learnings. There's so many challenges beyond just what a regular, I'm going to put it in quotes, marketer has to deal with. Right? Like we're talking about all kinds of inconsistencies, regulations that are different state to state, internationally different. And you're trying to, solve all of these challenges with tools that aren't actually designed for the industry in mind. So, I mean, kudos to all of you for kind of trailblazing this, but I can see, your first question about, where do you see full legalization? I mean, I can see all of you 5 years down the road kind of saying, listen, if it weren't for us, all you guys wouldn't be where you are, and so kudos to you for kind of doing that. And, great end to our day. So thank you again for being here and sharing your thoughts with our audience. And thank you, Michael, for a great job in moderating. We'll hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks all. Amazing. Well, guys, thank you very much on behalf of everyone at Brand Innovators. Again, wrapping up our 10th anniversary celebrations this week. It's been quite a ride, especially the last 18 months, being thrown an absolute curveball. And so I would like to just quickly acknowledge our amazing panelists, our moderators, our incredible group of sponsors, that have been with us through this 10-year journey. And I know on behalf of Mark and Brandon, who are our co-founders, we truly appreciate the community and none of what we do would be viable, would be interesting, would be of any value if it weren't for those of you that are listening and those of you that are supporting us through this journey. So thank you so much. And I want to say we're right back in the saddle as of Monday, June 14th. We're going to have a consumer comeback summit because, of course, as we saw today, a lot of people are back in offices. It's so good to see. And so that summit begins at 1 p.m. and we're going to be joined by marketing leaders from Ground Truth, Whole Foods, American Airlines. I bet you they're super busy right now. KFC Global, Unilever, and many more. So thank you to everyone for being here today, for participating, for all of your questions and your engagement. And until next time, I'm Ritesh Shah at Brand Innovators Member Services signing off from Toronto. Have a wonderful evening.